Everyone, welcome to our second session. I'm going to mute everybody there now. This is week 2. We'll be looking at chapter 3 today. But before we begin, Sister Elizabeth has a little prayer to start us off. So, Sister Elizabeth, you take it away.
Since we're celebrating the feast of the holiday for St. John the Baptist, and that's the patron feast of St. John's, I thought we could begin today with a prayer related to St. John the Baptist, echoing his life through the words of his father in the Benedictus, Zechariah. If you just give me one moment to share. Can you see that, Robert, on the screen?
Yes, we can.
And the image I've chosen is from the St. John's Bible. I think you're very familiar with that. It's an illuminated Bible from our time, but using the illuminations of earlier times. And here we can see St. John the Baptist has finished his work, and a new path is opening as he walks away. So, Carmel, would you read the beginning reflection for us from Luke, and then read the next time when next reflection comes up.
And you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins.
In the lonely places, the wilderness, where we stand forlorn, windswept, and alone, your voice calls out, prepare a way for the Lord. In the dark places, the shadows, where we hide our fears, embrace our tears, your voice calls out, prepare a way for the Lord.
Because of the tender mercies of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace.
As the rising sun comes to us each dawn, shine upon those who live in darkness, that all might know the joy of our salvation, the forgiveness of sins, and your great mercy. For the desert places in which we walk, the streets we roam, the paths we cross, guide our feet. Take us to places where you would go. Give us words that you would use, that in these times of promise and preparation, we might point the way with John the Baptist to the one who guides our feet into the way of peace. So, Robert, over to you.
Thank you. I just need to share my screen. So we're looking at chapter 3 today, which is Technology and Dominance, the Grandeur of Humanity in the Light of the Promises of AI. So just a few slides to give some background into what it is we're talking about when we talk about technology, and what we're talking about when we talk about digital technology. And then I've got a little bit of a timeline to show how we got to where we are, at least for this moment right now, because as Pope Leo points out in this chapter, what you say today about AI, tomorrow could be outdated.
Mm-hmm. Actually, what we say today about AI is already, because the labs and everything are way beyond it.
Yes, and because that technology has probably taken what we've said
Yeah.
and added it into the machine of what is becoming artificial intelligence. So what is technology? It's, talk of technology today, it's really omnipresent everywhere, ubiquitous everywhere we look, listen, read, there's talk about technology. But the word that tech part of technology comes from the Greek word techne. Now, the word in the Greek understanding is rooted in the woodworking and building of things, but it also came to reference art, craft, and skill. That's why the word artisan in Greek is tekton, and this is a profession that is given to Joseph, and therefore there's some reason to believe that maybe Jesus had some skill in this field of being a tekton. But as this concept developed, there was connections between techne and episteme, which is how we know what we know, philosophy, ethics, aesthetics, and theology. It's not until the Industrial Revolution comes along and really changes the way we understand techne, and where technology really becomes technology. It becomes something purely mechanical and profitable. This is where the other part of the word technology comes into play, where it becomes more of a rational discourse about tech. And because of the Industrial Revolution is where there's always been a connection between technology and warfare, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in chapter 5 of the encyclical. But with the Industrial Revolution and then the nuclear age, which we're still living in the shadow of, technology becomes an existential threat. Right? We are starting to create tools, things that are a threat to our very existence. And of course, now we live also with the threat of climate change, which has come about because of the many technological advances that we've made coming out of the Industrial Revolution into the time in which we're living now. So the age-old question about technology is, do we make technology, or does technology make us? So there's 3 broad categories here. I'm not going to go into this very much because this could be a whole course talking about technology and its impacts on us and human culture. One approach is the mechanical approach that just says, well, technology is just artifacts, it's just tools that we create and use. And they're just that. There's really no limits beyond what it does to us. Another is the developmental approach. This sees that the processes that go into the making of the technology advance us as human beings culturally and technologically. The example that could be given here is technological advances that are made like in terms of like the space flight, right? They're designed for a very specific function, but then afterwards, that technology becomes something that's used in a more general kind of way. Another example would be, radar was developed during wartime for use for making war. After the war, it gets applied in a lot of different kinds of fields, and particularly meteorology, right? So it helps us predict the weather. And also there's the techno-culture approach. And this says that tech directs and creates human culture, right? So the technology is making us into who we are or who we are becoming as human beings. But of course, it's not a simple either or, but a both and. We do know that we create technology and then technology returns the favor. You could say the same thing about the way we make gods. God creates us in God's image, and then we return the favor by recreating God in our image. And the response to tech has always been very dualistic, right? So there are some who are the naysayers, they point to the danger of technology and warn that this, technology will be our undoing or change us, to something that's not really human anymore. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have those who laud technology as our savior, right? So the answer to problems that are created by technology, better technology, right? So it's putting our hope in technology to save us. And on the other extremes, that technology will be our undoing. And in this particular moment, if you're thinking of a seesaw, it feels like we're tipping more towards the danger side. And we were just chatting before we began. There seems to be a real anxiety now about artificial intelligence in particular. So we feel like we're slipping over into the danger or the doom side of how we view technology. But technology, it can be seen to as an amplification of the best of us or the worst of us. If I had more time today, we could go into the work of Martin Heidegger, who talked a lot about technology. Now, he was a real naysayer about technology, and he really wanted to run away to his cottage out in the German forest and just escape all of this because he thought, the technological advances were really terrible. But what he says that's really helpful, I think, is that he sees technology as a window into the human heart, right? So whatever is in your heart, technology will really amplify that. So if the core of your heart is good, that technology can, not necessarily it will, but can produce good from that. If your heart is dark, evil, technology will multiply and amplify that. And so when he looked at the technologies that were developing in his time, he did not like what he saw because he saw that they were an amplification of something dark within humanity. Then he joined the Nazi Party, but that's another for another day of his heart. Yeah.
Actually, he joined the Nazi Party much before that.
Yeah.
I think part of his naysaying against technology was in response to what the Nazis did with their technology.
Yeah. So a helpful definition of technology that I like to use, and this is certainly from a theological perspective and from a Christian theological perspective, and it comes from the wonderful book by Heidi Campbell and Stephen Garner, Network Theology, Negotiating Faith in Digital Culture. It's from 2016, so maybe a bit outdated now, but they give a very succinct definition of what technology is. Technology is a human activity that is carried out within the context provided by God for human beings to exercise their creativity and agency. So taking that definition of technology, just about anything around us could be considered technology. I would say religion is a technology. Language certainly is a technology. So, what is digital technology? And I'm no expert on this at all. So these are just a very basic kind of understanding of what is digital technology. Digital technology is converting real world information, text, images, sound, into binary code. So that's a series of zeros and ones. And this is where technology really starts to get away from us, because technology becomes something that only a select few can really understand. And as the digital technology has proceeded, evolved, developed, it is increasingly fewer and fewer people understand what is exactly going on in these technologies. But at its basic level, digital technology is taking real world tactile information and breaking it down into binary code, zeros and ones. So think back, to a time, and it's popular again now, but a record, right? You go and buy the latest album from your favorite artist, you bring it home, you put it on your record player, you listen to it. The only people who can really listen to that are the people who are in the room with you, or if you take it and you give it to someone and they take it home and they listen to it. Digital technology takes that, the information on that record and breaks it down into binary code, zeros and ones, and makes it an electronic thing that you can share very easily, that you can take and take a piece out of it and just take that one piece and do something else with it, or you can store it very easily. If you've got 100,000 records, you probably have a whole room or a wing of your dwelling dedicated to storing these records. In digital format, I mean, and the technology for storage has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. I remember when I got my first computer. Well, my first computer was a piece of junk. Was very little storage on it. And I remember we were getting what I would call our first real computer. And it was a friend of mine. His son was a real techie kind of guy, and he was going to build this computer for us and take the different parts and put it together. And he said, there's 8 gigs of storage.
That was a lot of time.
8 gigs of storage. You'll never fill it up. You'll never. Now we're into, what is it? Well, tetrabytes now, isn't it? So this unbelievable amount of storage of information. So as I said, digital technology allows for easy duplication, editing, storage, and rapid transmission. And it has radically transformed the way that we, keep information and share information. And all of the technologies that we see around us today, like YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, all spring from this advancement, put that in quotation marks, in digital technology. So then there's also the internet, which is really a network of networks. Or another way that it's described is the information superhighway, hyperlinked hyperreality. And this deep thought came to me when I was producing the slide, so I put it down, but I put question marks because I'm not sure if this makes sense or if this is actually what it is. So if digitality is the language, the internet is the space.
I know what you're pointing to.
But I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't argue with you.
No, I know what you're pointing to. I don't know if space is the word, but
Yeah.
and
I don't know if language
something within which it's held, and space is what we usually think of, but I don't know if space is the word.
Even though that is the
I know.
we call it hyperspace.
I know.
But it's not space in the way that we conceive of space.
No, it's no.
Where like you would walk into something and you're inside a room and oh, look at this space. Right? But those two things go hand in hand if we're to understand digital technology.
I think for a lot of
Where we are
people,
right
the
now.
internet, instead of becoming the space, the internet has become the reality, which is even scarier.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, hyperreality.
The only thing that brings me peace is in your image there, that Sister Elizabeth is at the head of the space.
Well, that
Right in the mind.
that
You're right.
was on purpose.
Yeah, you're right there.
It is located right in the brain.
As you should, as was ordained from the beginnings of the universe.
So shall it ever be. The world without end. And all of this digital technology has happened at breakneck speed. One of my favorite books on technology and artificial intelligence is a book called Godlike, 500-Year History of Artificial Intelligence and Myth, Machines, and Monsters by Kester Bruin. I'm not going to do 500 years, but I'm going to focus on from the time from when digital becomes a concept, and then very quickly something that's actually able to be carried out up until where we are right now. So important dates and developments in terms of digital technology, and first of all, from 1930 to 1970, and you'll see the first couple of entries here, they're just still very theoretical. So in 1936, Alan Turing, which is probably a name some of you have heard before, proposes the idea of universal computing network, right? And it's just a theory. It's just an idea that he has. If he had lived, maybe he would have been able to bring it to fruition, but unfortunately he died. There is a great novel, though. It's called Machine Like Me, and it's by Ian McEwan. And it's based on the premise that what the world would be like if Alan Turing didn't die. And so we are much more advanced in terms of artificial intelligence and robotics. And so the story is about a romantically involved couple who purchases an artificial intelligence android, and it becomes a love triangle because it becomes very competitive. And it's just really, really interesting. But so Alan Turing proposes the Universal Computing Network. In 1945, a scholar by the name of Vannevar Bush conceptualizes the mimics. Now, Vannevar Bush was in the Second World War. He was very high up in the research and development part of the American military. He was actually also involved in the Manhattan Project. And so after the war, he puts out a paper where he talks about this device that he imagines called a Memex. And a Memex to him is a desktop kind of storage device that takes people's personal information, photos, records, documents, and compresses them into this device that can be, almost as infinite storage. But again, this is just a concept that he has. But it's coming from this emerging research into digital technology, being able to take information and compress it down into binary code. Also in 1945, with the end of the Second World War, this sees the emerging digital technologies begin to be mainstreamed and, very importantly, monetized. In 1950, again, Alan Turing proposes the Turing test. And this is a test to test the humanity or the mechanical nature of intelligence. And it's a really convoluted test, but it's just trying to figure out what is machine, what is human. And there's connections between a present day test to see if someone is human or an artificial intelligence. And it's just one question or statement. Prove to me you're not a robot. Prove to me without a shadow of a doubt that you're not a robot. We're not going to take time to do that right now, but there's a line between that test to the Turing test. In 1966, there's the creation of ELIZA, which is the first conversational computer. In 1969, what will become the internet launches. This is ARPANET. This is a military tool. And again, it's a network of computers connected together for sharing information. In 1969, the first internet message is sent across that ARPANET network. And it's a conversation that's supposed to happen between, I think there's a student in UCLA and one in Berkeley. And the guy in Berkeley is sending the message. And the first message is supposed to be log in, LOGIN. And he types L, he types O, he pushes G, the whole thing crashes. So on the other end, the person receives the message low. And many writers in technology, theology, and philosophy say that sounds like an angelic message. No.
Maybe just laugh out loudly, perhaps laugh.
But a lot has been written about the angelic kind of, was it a warning about what they were about to do? Or was it, good tidings about,
Where's the Newfoundland version of law?
Yes.
look what we're doing here now, look. So from 1971 to 1990, you see things start to speed up. So in 1971, we have the first microprocessor, and the people working on that technology were actually students of Vannevar Bush, who conceived of the Memex. So his students are trying to bring into reality his dream of the Memex. In 1971, the first email is sent. In 1977, the first personal computers, and some of you probably can remember these, the Apple II, the TRS-80, the Commodore, and boy, have we come a long ways after those things. In 1983, the first mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatek. Anybody have one of those back in the day? Great big, it's about this big. It had an antenna that comes out. Very expensive. Only very select few people would have been able to afford that. In 1988, only 1988, the first IP connection between Europe and North America. That's not that long ago. In 1989, the first hyperlink is introduced. Again, not that long ago. From 1991 to 2000, in 1991, the internet was public. It's hard to, it's for those of us who, came of age in that period, we can remember a time when there was not an internet. But there's a whole generation now, maybe two generations of people who do not remember what life was like before the internet. I graduated from high school in 1994. I had not really heard of the internet. Maybe I did, but I certainly hadn't been online. We had computers at our school, but they were basically used to teach us typing.
Yeah.
That was it. So in 1994, Amazon launches. This is very early on in the age of public access to the internet. And it starts in Jeff Bezos's garage.
This is where David should have bought shares in Amazon, but an Apple.
Yeah, this is where we all put ourselves. But not getting in on the action. In 1997, something unbelievable happens. Deep Blue, which is a chess game that was developed by IBM, beats world-renowned, world champion chess player Garry Kasparov. This, along with setting off a lot of wonder about it, there was also a lot of dread. And the line between wonder and dread is very fine sometimes. But this really rocked the world, that there was now a computer, basically, that could beat a human being playing, well, any kind of game, but especially chess. In 1998, Google launches. And then in 2000, so from 2000 to 2002, it's what called the dot-com crash, the bubble burst, and a lot of tech companies go out of business. Trillions of dollars are lost in stock market crashes. And then from the ashes, we move into the period which we still find ourselves, although it feels like we're on the cusp of another period now, where we're more deeply moving into the AI technologies. So everybody remember the year 1999 going into the Y2K stuff? Like everybody was so worried about that, it turned out to be nothing. But another threat was looming that we didn't know was coming, because in 2003, the Facebook launches. So when it was initially released, it was called the Facebook and later on refined to Facebook. And that now, permeates just about everybody's life. Even if you're not on Facebook, I bet you're still going to Facebook to find information on things.
Mhm.
In 2005, YouTube launches. In 2007, the first iPhone releases. And in 2008, 4 billion cell phone subscribers is reached. That's 68% of the world's population. And that's from 1983, when the first cell phone is launched, to 2008. I mean, that is just a skyrocket of usage. And then from 2011 to today, in 2016, person whose name comes up a lot in technological advancements of the last 20 or so years, Elon Musk co-founds Neuralink. And basically, Neuralink is a computer that's connected to your brain. I know, yeah. And they're still working away on it. And then apparently they've done tests and they say they're making a lot of progress. But this will, your brain will be connected to a computer, and I guess then can connect to other computers, networks.
Well, according to some conspiracy theorists, anybody who got the COVID vaccine is already hooked up to it.
Yes. Yeah. But there's a whole group of people who are longing for that, what they call the moment of singularity, where human brains can be uploaded into the cloud, so we can fully overcome the physical limitations of these flesh sacks that we're walking around in, right? They want to transcend that. And there's been a lot of serious scholarship written in that area. And Pope Leo talks about some of that.
That's supposed to happen while we're here. What? That's supposed to happen once we die, not while we're here.
But the inspiration comes from it. And in the book I mentioned, Godlike, there's the author makes a lot of connections between religion and technology. The claims of both, right? And how they've been used over the years, right? So a lot of similarities. In 2017, half of the world's population is connected to the internet. In 2017, Google also introduces the transformer architecture, which is the mathematical foundation behind today's generative AI. Don't ask me to explain what transformer architecture is. It may have something to do with Optimus Prime and the Decepticons, but I don't know. That was a transformer joke. Dave Newman got it, but I don't know that anybody else did. In 2020, COVID-19 global pandemic brings live streaming and Zoom into the mainstream. Before COVID, had anybody been on Zoom?
Not but it's equivalent.
But it was not.
I've been using it for classes.
Yeah. Well, we were using GoToMeeting.
Yeah, same thing.
But it was not very common.
And Skype we were using.
Skype was around 2 years.
Yeah.
But the pandemic really kicked this stuff into the mainstream, certainly live streaming, and anybody who was involved in parish ministry in that time around 2020, 2021, the mad rush to learn how to live stream, how to Zoom, how to set up a camera, how to have audio. Like it was like a kickstart of all the stuff into the mainstream. In 2022, ChatGPT launches. Only 2022. I think I said last week when I taught a course in the winter semester of 2022, I had a section on artificial intelligence, and the look on people's faces were like, what are you talking about? Like, this is science fiction. But they very quickly saw that it's not science fiction. In 2026, 7 tech companies make up half of the stock market. They're called the Magnificent Seven.
7 deadly sins.
Yes, there's other analogies you could say. NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, and Tesla.
Is Amazon a tech company?
Yes. Yeah.
What is the tech that it does?
Well, it's internet shopping.
Oh, but it doesn't produce tech.
It uses
Well,
it as
it
it's made,
It
as it's
does and it
made.
doesn't, because,
It's the
it-
connector between suppliers, distributors, and the
and it drives technological advancement.
consumer.
Because people are trying to find more efficient ways for Amazon to make more money. So it's driving technological advancement.
Yeah.
And Tesla is also in there as well. I was just listening to, I'm telling Karen before we came out, I was listening to a podcast, and the person being interviewed was talking about Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram and Threads. And they've launched, they monitor their workers' emails with an AI, so that the AI can learn about their employees and what they're working on, so that the AI can replace those workers.
Oh,
But this is how they make money, and this is how they are one of the most profitable companies in the world,
Constantly downsizing.
constantly downsizing.
And they say,
And so-
that, Robert, they say that half of the world's population own a Meta product, use a Meta product every day.
Yeah.
3.5 billion people every single day use a Meta product.
Yeah. And this one should be muted.
It looks like 350.
Yeah, did you have your hand up? I'm trying to figure it out to you.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say about Amazon. Amazon is,
Yeah, Thurki, you need to unmute yourself now. Okay.
okay. No, I was just gonna say about Amazon. Amazon is one of the biggest web service providers. So like all the applications we use could be hosted on Amazon. It has a service called AWS, Amazon Web Services. So it's Amazon and Microsoft. They are like the biggest competitors. So any service we use has to be hosted on Amazon or Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere recently too that Google is now included in these.
Yes.
So it's not
Google's coming into
Magnificent
picture.
Magnificent Eight now. And so many experts now warn that we're in a position where there's going to be another tech bubble that's going to burst. Because what's happening right now is AI is not making money. Right? There's a lot of investment being poured into it, but it's really not turning a profit. They haven't found a way to really monetize it yet. And because of that, they think the valuation is going to outstrip what it's actually producing. So when that happens, they call it the bubble burst, which will have devastating impacts. It will make the 2008 housing crash look like a blip, because so much money has been poured into this. And the money that's being put into it is coming from other corporations, but it's coming from us too. Like, people's retirement savings, group savings have been put into these technologies, so that when the bubble bursts, all that could be completely wiped out.
And you think of all the services that will be disrupted as a lot of these providers.
Yes.
that's a hard way to start your Monday.
And not to add to the doom and gloom, Bill, but also this year, SpaceX, just last week, went public, and its valuation was driven by AI speculation, which many folks think overestimates the value of the shares, but that speculation made Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire.
And he should be asked a Turing test.
I don't know if he would pass it or not.
No, I don't think he would.
So that brings us to where we are right now and the things that Pope Leo is very concerned about in the writing of his encyclical. And I know that all of this is very exhausting. It's very, it's very heavy stuff. But I don't want to just make us feel afraid of AI, but I do want to make us aware of AI and the implications and possible dangers of it. And there's a lot of good possibilities, good things that can come from this technology, but we just have to be aware of where it came from, where it might be going, and how we can collectively kind of respond to these technologies. Now, I don't have a summary like Sister Elizabeth had last week, and so how is it now? 24. Let's just launch right into conversation about it, and share. Well, before I do that, I'm going to let Sister Elizabeth kind of respond to anything that I just said or anything she wants to say about the chapter. I don't have a summary. I have a lot of notes and highlights and stuff written in the margins, but in respect of time and getting some conversation going, I'll go to Sister Elizabeth and then maybe we can have some conversation as a group.
I think what Pope Leo does is exactly what you just said, Robert. He's saying artificial intelligence and all of that technology that connects with that is not something to be feared in the sense of that it's going to dominate humanity, nor is it something to be denied or ignored or, I'm not going to have anything to do with this. His whole point is that we have to have two things running together. As he says, we need to deepen the scientific research that's underpinning all of this that you talked about. But at the same time, it has to be accompanied by moral and spiritual discernment. So how do we make sure that this, and it's a new technology, but it is a technology, like language is a technology. How can we make certain that it is that we don't misunderstand it as a replacement for humanity or an enhancement of humanity? And for me, that's probably one of the most important statements he makes in the encyclical. He says that if we see that the role of technology is to make us better humans, if the role of technology of artificial intelligence is to improve who we are as humans, that does two things. First of all, it says our most important quality as humans is intelligence. It doesn't account for the other qualities we have as humans. And secondly, it says those who are not as intelligent as others are not as good as others. And that is the existential question here as we approach this. So I think you've given us a really good foundation for understanding that this is here to stay. But what is it? We have no idea. And he says that there's no way we can describe even what it is. But how do we, in that unknown, provide that, accompany the science of this and the greed of this with the moral and spiritual discernment? When this started out, it wasn't about money. When this started out back before the Second World War, it really was about improving our ability to acquire the intelligence. Now it's very much about money, very much about money. And the myth that Elon Musk's intelligence has made him a trillionaire is garbage. Elon Musk's money has come from using the intelligences of all the humans like us, and all of his money has come through government payments for contracts. So how easily we can create gods among us because we don't think this through carefully. So
yeah, and I think the other thing to remember too is AI, artificial intelligence, is us. right? Like it's not like it's
an
from somewhere else.
aspect. It's an aspect of us.
But it's us. It's our intelligence that's been.
Yeah.
It doesn't capture the emotional intelligence that human beings have.
No, exactly. So I think a really important theological question, that Pope Leo's trying to get us to reflect on is, what does it mean to be human? Now we've had, and I think as Christians or people from the Judeo-Christian tradition, how we understand what it means to be human is tied up with what it means to be created in the image of God. There's never been one singular answer to what that means, right? What does it mean to be created in the image of God? We've had a variety of answers to that. But whatever our answer is now has to be more holistic. It can't be just about intelligence, right? It can't be just about reason. It has to be something that's more all-encompassing of all of us as human beings.
So the some concerns that folk have, and it's not simply AI. You say it's our intelligence, but is AI to post-human in relation to concerns that they would have about that?
AI.
Yeah, like I think when folk worry about AI, sometimes they're worrying about what may be post-human. AI becoming sentient of some sort.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can't be afraid of AI for what AI is.
Yeah.
But it's not human, as you say.
No, it's
The
not.
concern is if there's a transition into something that's beyond it.
Yeah, we're still at a point where it is human created,
Right.
not human or not human like. But a number of people, yes, are worried about
Yeah, I
it
think-
becoming human.
Yeah, that's-
Now, if you listen to the experts, we're a long way off from anything like that.
I think
happening.
they're afraid that it will, I don't like the word automated because it doesn't capture enough of it. The fact that it can work without us, improve without us. But I think one of the big things, and they're relatively simple things that we can do, is to, in an age that's becoming increasingly informational and economic and impersonal, that is to build and pay attention, not just to the individual, which the internet has done, cut people off, but to community and who we become in community, who we are in community, what our gifts are to be given and received as a world community, and I mean people and the environment. But it's that we are more than information about ourselves, because the internet is information and made financial, monetized.
Mhm.
So that we are not just the information. If I read your obituary, maybe a lovely obituary, but it's not you. It's information about you. And I think we have to, in an age that works completely in the other direction, the importance of community has never been so great.
I go to Dave, he's got his hand up there for a while.
Yeah, the comment that I wanted to make there was just around kind of the how AI drives things, drives the questions in terms of who we are as humans and what makes us unique. So I come from a computing background, so I'm the algorithms guy. I'm the guy that sort of figures out what's the way to make things happen as quickly as possible and using as little storage as you can use. And when networks come and go, how do you deal with that and that sort of thing. And, I went to university with a bunch of those folks who were involved with the DeepMind, Deep Blue, chess playing computers and that sort of stuff like that. So the AI wasn't my thing, but I was an algorithm guy. And but the algorithm or the observation that I always have with AI is that it's challenging sort of the key elements that make us human, right? So the questions of autonomy, the notion that it doesn't necessarily need to get triggered by a human. Something can sort of drive itself. but we have our own choice, and we do things in an autonomous way. And the other thing is the thinking element. So that, the technologies that we have that interface with humans, you mentioned Neuralink, we're quite a ways from, connecting to our brain and getting that sort of perception through the brain. We have some, technology that kind of works the other way, where we can do an EEG when we hook up all these sensors to our minds, and we get a sense of, okay, when somebody thinks cat, what does that mean in terms of electrical signals? But, we're a long way from implanting an image and the smell and the purr and the petting, the feeling of a cat, on somebody's brain. We have technologies with our other senses, right? So, and we have them to varying degrees. So, for smell, I mean, we've been reproducing smells for a while. Hearing, like we've reproduced sounds for a while. You talked about records, and if you go way back to radio dramas, you've got, people trying to make sounds to emulate the door closing and all that sort of stuff like that. But we still haven't figured out how to connect to the ear, right? So we're still broadcasting something into the ear, but we don't connect with it. With our taste, like vanilla, we basically have that replicated. Chefs will say there's no need to use real vanilla because the synthetic vanilla that we have basically replicates the taste. But it's these two elements of being able to think and being able to do things autonomously that AI is attempting to mimic. And that is sort of what I see that makes us super uncomfortable and really need to answer these questions. Because it's one thing when somebody, figures out how to make a hologram, and they project the image onto your retina. Like that's still, like Rob said, dealing with the human sacks of flesh, like figuring out how to imprint the image on your retina. But when you start to think about the brain and replicate how we think and make decisions and choose to act or not act, like that's a whole new level.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for all that. That's good to hear from someone in that kind of field that knows. You kind of described it very succinctly. But I can't help but think that in terms of the what you were saying about thinking, and our anxiety around that, but then I think about in practice, we're kind of going full force down that road anyways, because of these little devices that we carry around with us all the time now, which we've given over a fair bit of our thinking to smartphones, right? How many times a day do you Google something? It's a dozen or more probably, right? So we don't store as much information in our brains anymore. We've outsourced it to devices and to now, the cloud, which nobody understands. Like it's there somewhere, we don't know where, but right. So it just feels like we're going to, while there's some anxiety, that generally we might just welcome this technology because we're already well down the road of outsourcing that kind of thinking. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do people think?
And we'll have to think about the questions of volume and speed, because the volume is just too much for us to handle, and the speed is too fast for us to handle. So we may have to accept less.
Linda?
There. Okay. So as we're talking about this, I'm now go back to the ecological implications of the technology as well, because as much as we talk about storage in the cloud, which makes us think that it's up above us somewhere, it's really in these large storage containers. That's maybe not the right word, that uses all kinds of energy and all kinds of cooling systems to keep everything in check. And what are we doing to our environment?
And Pope Leo talks about that in this as well, that environment, that ecological aspect, that we're not at, what's the cost of what we're doing here in terms of that. I think that's something people are finally are starting to tune into. And even in the last 6 months, the attention in the States and in Canada to those data centers that are being built using massive amounts of water and electricity, using massive amounts of land, either farmland or desert land, because they're so big. And what is that impact on the communities of people and of animals and plants that before lived in those areas? So that's very quickly coming to the fore, very quickly actually, in terms of our awareness.
Yeah, and I don't, as much as the people who have developed these technologies, from the stage where they were just conceptualizing to the actual like bringing into reality of these technologies, their concern has been the transcending of the limitations of human beings, human bodies. I don't think they've given much thought to our wider environment or the ecosystem that makes us human, right? And so not a lot of thought has been given to the consequences of, so if the day comes we do transcend and there is that moment of singularity where we can upload our consciousness to the cloud and escape all this, well then it's still here somewhere, right? It's still being stored in a warehouse somewhere, drinking up water and energy to keep it going. So this is why people like Ilda Delio say, technology needs theology. It needs, people working in philosophy and things that are asking these kinds of questions, like what are the implications of what you are proposing here? Mm-hmm. I got to go to Michelle and then I'll come back to you. So Michelle Feener first.
I think is really, really ironic that that AI cannot survive without water and we can't survive without water. I think that's really ironic.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a wonderful, is deeper even than irony, Michelle, isn't it? What AI doesn't, what we as humans don't do very well, I think, is see those interconnections of our actions. A choice I make today, I don't always see all the implications of that choice well beyond me, or even for me personally, myself, in that instance. One of the most powerful phrases in this whole section of the encyclical for me is very much tied to this. Every design choice reflects a vision of humanity. So if your vision of humanity is driven by money or greed or power or an intersection of those, you're wanting to create humanity in that image. You're going to use and develop AI to do that. If your image of humanity is of people and land and earth loving one another and seeing each other in what we call God, who we call God, the image of God in our traditions, you approach this question very differently. So I really think you've touched on something here that is at the heart of this chapter. And it reminds us that I, as a human, am more than my intelligence. I'm more than my affection. I'm more than my will. I'm more than my community. I'm more than my commitment. I'm more than my relationships. But all of those are a part of who I am. If we prioritize one of those, in this case, intelligence, that's the humanity we're going to be in danger of creating. And the fact that 10 people on this earth are in charge of creating that vision of humanity now is very worrisome, very worrisome. And that's why Leo made this his first encyclical, I think, is to get people like all of us on this call into this conversation. So it's not 10 people who are going to decide how the 8 billion of us are going to look in the future. Not even governments intervening, or not even, no group, other groups. So that's the terror of this one. Unlike language and unlike fire, when we invented them, it was a much more of a communal invention. This one is much more particularized and very few humans who don't care too much about the rest of us, I don't think. I don't understand. They don't realize they're going to die too. I don't get that myself. That's why we invented heaven, to give us some reason to die happy, but I don't know what they would die happy with.
They're not going to die in their consciousness. They'll never die.
They'll die warm and cozy in their bunker. Because there's been one of the alarming things since COVID is the number of billionaires who are building basically bunkers that they can go into. Now, some people think it's because they know the tide is going to turn pretty soon, that the plebes aren't going to be complacent much longer, and that there's a possible uprising revolution that's coming. And so this is why they built these underground bunkers where they can go and hide until, we all kill each other, and they can come out and, I don't know, live for a few more years. I don't know. But I think that's also there's a great deal of illusion behind this too, right? Self and delusion, right? That the thought that they're going to live forever, the thought that they're autonomous beings separated from everything else and everything else around them, right? So, yeah, I think there's a good deal of delusion. Bill, you had something.
But just the other thought for me is not enough being thought about the evolutionary impact on human development and behavior, because now we're talking about, I know just yesterday, concerns about young children with screen time and so on. But the idea of just people having such access to instantaneous information, the thought of taking on the research and to have patience to wait for response, and blood pressure being going up because people can't get the information fast enough, like those impacts on human physiology and development, not even factored into any of this.
No, we basically still have ancient
Systems.
Our brain hasn't really developed that much from our, first ancestors 20, 30,000 years ago. And now we're bombarding it with these constant
at an exponential rate, that is beyond anybody's control.
I don't think it's serving us very well. Like that. I just don't see where it's serving humanity very well.
Yeah.
I thought the weather was depressing this morning.
Actually, it's got funny.
See, I think, again, without being simplistic, because I don't think that there is just a simple answer, but I think there is a way that we can not just survive while all this is happening. I think that we can be who we are called to be because of some of this, so that we start to value relationships, we start to create new kinds of community. Now, we can build it on the foundations of the communities we've known and take their best aspects. But until we realize that we are not just individual users or economic, persons to feed a machine, until we go beyond that, we will be feeling overwhelmed all the time.
Well, just the growing interest in people wanting to study contemplative practice and yoga and all these things, because they're missing in today's culture,
Dave Morgan?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've had some discussion on, the motivations for AI and what factors into the individual decisions that people are making, as they're building AI. What are they motivated by? Are they motivated by love, or are they motivated by profit, or, what is motivating them? And it is important to recognize that you can sort of put artificial intelligence in some different buckets, right? So you have these large companies, as Sister Davis has said, you've got about 10 people, who are controlling the largest data companies in the world. And as somebody who works in privacy, like these big companies, the Amazons, the Googles, The Facebook's, well, Meta is the parent company. You know, in the privacy world, we actually speak about these companies largely as data companies. Yes, they're technology companies, and as we said, Amazon has a services platform which people use for computing and all that sort of thing. But we often view these companies as data companies because the data is essential to AI. These huge volumes of data that we've been producing over the last 20 years. And us as humans go to these companies because they are providing something which is good to us. You know, Amazon sells stuff for a cheaper price and everybody's motivated by the cheaper price. And we go to Google because we want to see where the traffic delay is out at the Foxtrot Bridge. And we want to know if we're going to be delayed by 7 minutes or if we're going to be delayed by an hour and a half, right? So these companies are acquiring massive amounts of data. And these companies are becoming sort of, they're almost the knowledge gatekeepers. They're the general knowledge sort of AI companies. And they're going to be inherent in our life if we continue on this path. They already are sort of embedded in our life. We're asking these questions of these companies and the AI is giving us the answers. And for the most part, we're okay with the level of knowledge that it's providing to us. But then we also have these other bucket of people who are using AI motivated for some very different things, a lot less on profit. Now, not to say that the motivations of these large companies are exclusively profit. Like they are solving questions and giving us things that we feel that we value. And money is the mechanism by which people value things generally in society, even though as followers of Christ, we don't necessarily value things in that way. That's what society has largely bought into. But we have this other bucket of people who are doing sort of niche versions of AI. So I work in a building here in St. John's, and there's a group that does AI for the Genesis Center over at MUN. And so they just do sort of on-demand AI tools for their clients. And I was having a conversation with a guy in the kitchen, and I was saying, okay, so you're doing this work. Are there any sort of AI projects you have on the side? And he's like, well, actually, I'm developing this AI tool for blind people that helps them do certain things, navigate things in their life. And I was like, awesome, like AI for good. So, whether that person is doing it as a follower of Christ, because they believe in Christ, or they are a person of faith, or they're, motivated by love and they haven't found the words of faith to articulate that yet. I think that's a very positive thing. And there is, by extension, a matter of evangelism that ties into this discussion of AI, because it's imperative on all followers of Christ and people of faith to continue that evangelism and spread the word that, the actions that you perform and the decisions that you make, making them in the interest of love is vital. It really is, right? So,
And that's exactly, David, quoting what Pope Leo is saying here. He's not saying AI is evil. What he's saying is that to use that properly is at the heart of what we should be about as believers. And he does say very clearly what you just said. Technology is an invaluable tool for helping us care for each other. Invaluable. And so the challenge is, how do groups like Queen's College now find their new footing in a world to give us not the ability to shut down AI, the ability to do exactly what you just said, is using AI for our greater good. And it has the potential to do that incredibly well, incredibly at a level we could never have imagined before. Even us talking on this call today, this technology was not here even 10 years ago to do what we're doing today. My congregation is a group of Mercy Sisters because of Zoom that came because of COVID. We were able to talk to Sisters of Mercy all around the world in 44 countries in the world to how we can make mercy come alive more in the 21st century. We couldn't have done that in the past. A couple of us could have traveled to meet Mercy Sisters in other parts of the world, but the whole congregation couldn't do that. Today we can. We can even talk to people in other languages because AI allows the translators to do that. And so we can do way more with AI than we could have done without it to make this world a more just world and a more caring world. The question is, are we daring enough are we as daring as the ones who are using it for profit? Are we as equally daring to use it for the good of humanity? And that's what Leo is really challenging us to do, I feel.
Yeah, and it's another good reminder from Dave again too, that not to confuse the AI technology with the capitalistic system that is now trying to, make as much money as possible off this technology, right? There are good things that are coming out of this technology that will come out of this technology that I think will be transformative in fields of medicine and scientific research. We can't even imagine, but I think it's a good reminder that the technology is not synonymous with the system in which it is being birthed, right? So there are some really good things. And another thing that Dave made me think about is, I think, a really practical, well, I don't know what practical about, but good theological question for us to wrestle with in the next 4 minutes we have is,
It's all dead.
what is the good news in this world? What is the gospel in this world in which we find ourselves right now? That's not a rhetorical question.
No, and I think
You said 3 or 4 times and I agree with you, what you
Yeah.
think the good news is.
look at feed the hungry. Look at that. There it is. If you want to take all of it and sum it up, it's right there.
But I know at the synod, the Roman Catholic synod that we had, and we're in the implementation phase of now, digital technology played a huge role. And I'm really a dinosaur around digital technology, but I recognize that I do not have the skill set even to walk in this world of technology. I'd probably be much more well off in the Middle Ages somewhere. I like language and fire. I like those technologies, but I'm not so good at the digital side. And so how are we at Queen's College enabling the students of Queen's College as well as the professors at Queen's College to become evangelizers within this technological world?
Very good question.
I've asked the question to me, how do we even become in Queen's College concerned about ecology? So, I've in many of my courses, I've now introduced ecology in scripture, but I have never even dared to think about how do I do that in scripture, which was written long before we had artificial intelligence, but after we had language and fire. So I think that's a really important question you've just raised, Robert. Probably not going to be solved in the next 2 minutes.
Well, Michelle's going to solve it in 2 minutes.
Oh, no.
And if she's got any time over, we're going to go to Linda and she'll fix it all together.
I'm going to throw in the position of a Luddite because I'm leaning in that direction more and more. And that is that the fact that we continue to talk about technology only in terms of machines is a problem, whether the machines are used for good or not, right? I mean, in indigenous peoples, some indigenous environmentalists have this expression, technology, TEK, knowledge,
Yeah.
which it stands for traditional ecological knowledge. And, there's this idea that technology is really just the developing of machines, but like Elizabeth, bringing back the idea of, language being a technology and fire being a technology, our consciousness is a technology,
Yes.
right? For lack of a better word, mystical communion with plants is a technology. And the more we stress that technology is something outer to us, whether we use it for good or not, the less we have this capacity to go inward and tap into the deep emotional and intuitive resources that we could have to be one with the environment. And I'm just like, I sit in my garden and try to talk to my plants, and I'm not very good at it yet, but but that's a form of technology which we're ignoring as long as we continue to talk about machines being technology.
Yeah, and while I would, I share your interest in the Luddite life, I don't know that it's increasingly unlikely that that's even an option.
No, this is it for the world.
I think a good response is for us to become multi-technologically adapted so that, yes, we're going to have to spend some of our time in digital technology. I don't know how you escape it. It's kind of like the amniotic fluid that we're swimming in now, every aspect of our life. But other forms of technology become very important. Writing poetry, putting your hands down in the soil to plant things, cooking things, that we don't become just, so obsessed with the mechanical technology that you're talking about.
Conversation.
And I think this is where the church can provide a space to show people, to enable people that there are other ways, there are other technologies that humans can use to connect with each other, to connect with God, to connect with creation, right? Rather than it just being, let's all rush online now, create online churches. That's going to be one response, but I think it has to be more multi-technology than that. Linda, if you want to share your thought real quick.
Okay, so just a quick and maybe very simplistic answer to Sister's question. Sister, don't write yourself out as not having the skill set. You have the ideas, and we'll use people like Tharuka, who has a skill set to do certain things, because I've been looking at what she's done with her proposal for the new website for Queens. We get people that have that skill set, share our ideas, and have them put in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's not just either or. It's all of these. It's the multiplicity.
And learning
Right.
to use the technology within our courses with a critical eye, teaching people how to do that. I mean, that's essential.
Absolutely.
And as I've said recently, whatever the question is, the answer is inclusion. And that's
Yes.
how far we've tended sometimes to move from that. We exclude because we're of different religions or different cultures or different language groups or different intelligence levels or different kinds of creatures. And yet what we're being called to with integral ecology is that exclusion that we've managed to create on all kinds of levels is not helping us become the humans or the plant roses or the stones that we're meant to be. So, I think that is such an important way. And that as Carmel, when you reference Matthew 25, I was hungry, not feed the hungry. It does not say feed the hungry. I was hungry. I was a stranger. I was in prison. And when we get there in that sense of we are in this together, and it's together we become more and more the godlike universe that we're called to be because we're created out of that God. I think that's ultimately what we should be about at Queen's College, making it more and more relevant as we move forward. Not most universities are becoming less and less relevant to humanity. I think we as a college have that very deep call to become more immersed in this complicated stuff rather than less immersed in it.
Sister Liz, I love your use of the word godlike because it when that term is used in terms of technology, that, these artificial intelligence technology are godlike, they're usually referencing power,
Dominance. Yeah.
dominance, knowledge, or like omniscience, all knowing. But if we could look at our technologies being godlike, if they do what you just said, includes more people, treats people with compassion, makes the world a better place, takes into consideration balance within creation, that's a kind of godlike technology that I think we should all be working towards, rather than the godlike theology, which is rooted in bad theology, a bad understanding, a negative understanding of God. Then we might maybe get somewhere. But to bring it back to what Karen was saying, the only way we can do that by creating community, right? Without that, then we're never going to make any advancements because we get stuck as individuals.
That's why we Christians created the idea of a Trinity, isn't it?
Yes.
To articulate how much community is of the essence of being godlike. So Trinity is our best way of explaining that as Christians.
Excellent. Good stuff. And hopefully these conversations spill out from here out into other communities that you're a part of. But for today, we're going to wrap up. So next week, we're reading chapter 4, and we'll gather here at the same time. So take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It's good to see you all.
And
Thank you.
Robert sent us the link for last week, anybody who didn't get last week's session. And Robert will send us the link for today for those who weren't able to come today as well.
Okay,
Do the wonders of digital technology.
Putting it into practice.
Yes, yes. Using it for good.
Exactly.
Good discussion.